now I'm going to turn it over to Paul Woolmington, who's got Bobby Jones and Mark Ingall, and I'm going to let you run this part of the show. Paul's a friend of mine for many years. As I said earlier, he's run ad agencies, built them, sold them. One of the real successful folks, now running Canvas. It's your show, Paul. Thanks, buddy. Bobby and Mark. See you.
Well, that was pretty good, that music. I don't know, I did that especially for Mark, actually.
Thank you.
You know, our rock and roll days are over now.
But we still got the haircuts.
But we still got the haircut. So, this is going to be much better than the coffee break that was in the schedule, okay? So no one's allowed to leave, okay? You just cross your legs a little tighter, okay? Just for this. No, it's a delight to be here. Thank you, Barry, for inviting us. A wonderful conference. Let me make some introductions. Bobby Jones, I've got to know over the last year, he's got a storied career. He is Chief Marketing and Communications Officer for Peace First, an organization which brings together youth, brands, and cultural icons and brands from 90 countries around the world. He's doing an amazing job around reminding us what purpose is and galvanizing the youth of today around purpose and around brand and around culture. He's also the author of this book. I implore you, it's actually stimulated my thinking around why we would put this panel together. It is Good is the New Cool, Market Like You Give a Damn. It's an Amazon bestseller. Bobby co-wrote this with actually a serial client of mine, Afdal Aziz, who's now just moved to LA. And I commend you to read this. We are going to pick up on one of the big themes in this book. So, Good is the New Cool. Just type it into your Amazon and Bob's your uncle. Mark Ingall probably doesn't need much of an introduction, but I'll give it to him anyway. He is actually first and foremost a friend. We worked together many, many moons ago in various markets around the world. He was actually a client of mine as well. I forget that he was once a client. That was kind of a dangerous phase where friendship and client, you know, do they mix? But actually we never fell out, so that was great. He is the managing director of global marketing at Citi. Not to be confused just with Citibank. Citibank is a sub-part of Citi. Citi is the broader organization, obviously a global organization. So that's a little bit of the introductions. But let's just jump into the topic. You know, we know that we live in an age of discomfort. Every single business model, I mean, many of you in this room are either brand marketeers or actually are old media who are obviously embracing the new media embracing the old, or actually new. And obviously all of you are looking at, you know, in some way disruption within your own business model, disruption to other business models, but we look at it every day, and clearly we look at the news, we look at the business news. We live in an age of discomfort. And what we really want to talk about is, I think in this age where, ticker shock, let me just give you one headline. This is hot off the press. You may not know this fact, but millennials and many consumer groups actually think that we have an image problem in media and marketing. So let me just put that out there. Actually, it isn't a surprise to any of us. I think, you know, we've known that for many years, but I think it's accentuating that kind of issue of what image do we have in marketing, media, advertising, brands today. So the topic of discussion is how brands and businesses can add value today. And what I would say is that, you know, we spend a lot of time about how we talk to consumers, but what do we do? What are our actions? I think actions often speak much louder than words. So I think that's a good little segue to me asking the first question of Bobby. As you were obviously thinking of writing this book, as you wrote this book, what were the kind of keen insights you had over the image problem in marketing? And, you know, give us some kind of, a little bit of a context to the thesis behind the book.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I mean, so I've spent my entire career in marketing. I started when I was 17. That was my first marketing business, and I've been a marketer as an entrepreneur. I've been a marketer within agencies and worked with brands. And I started to see two big shifts that were happening, actually three. One, I started to see that there was a sense of fatigue and a lack of feeling of real purpose and meaning within the marketing industry. A lot of the people that I was working with within the agency and even my clients, there was just kind of this, there's this consistent feeling of like, does this work matter? Like, what are we doing? Does it matter? Like, how is this connected to something that's more meaningful, purposeful, and is there a better way? And then we started to see even beyond just kind of our personal experiences, we started to see data across the industry where you started to see this sense of what we call a crisis of meaningfulness in the industry. It's been well chronicled in Ad Age and a variety of different studies. And so we knew that there was this moment where marketing needed to find its way and its purpose in the world. The second thing that we started to see was that there was this rising generation of young people who were entering the workforce and who were growing into Empower as a consumer group that had a much different expectation of brands and the role they played in their lives. They wanted brands to actually solve problems in their lives. They didn't just want things that were just cool and shiny and interesting. They wanted things that actually added real value to their lives. And so there was this really interesting kind of shift that we were seeing where young people were actually demanding more from the brands and the people that were marketing to them. And they were also rewarding those brands that were doing it right with their business. So we started to see the rise of the Warby Parkers of the world, the Toms of the world, the Teslas of the world. There were all of these different brands, and Unilevers and others were seeing remarkable success from people supporting those businesses that were doing good. And then this last piece was that we saw there was this cultural shift. The celebrities, the influencers, just within popular culture, there was this rise in consciousness. And so we started to see these things, and as a marketer who was really trying to figure out how to find more purpose in my work, and after it was the same, our idea was, let's really understand this shift. Let's understand the people who are getting it right, and let's take what we learned and share that with everybody else who's trying to figure it out. And that was our intent. Our intent was to really create a book that provided a blueprint and a source of inspiration to every marketer, every entrepreneur, every person that was in our industry that was trying to figure out how to make money and do really interesting work that was also impacting the greater good.
Yeah, we're going to talk about something that actually connects Afdel with Mark and Mark's work. Before we get to that, I just wanted to ask Mark. I mean, Mark, as a storied marketeer, you've obviously done a lot of brand campaigns around the world, and tell me about from your perspective as someone who kind of sits at that intersection of media marketing, integration, the role, the shifting behaviours of consumers, the expectations of, and maybe where the do part of it becomes as important as the say part. In our comms.
Well, thanks to Bobby, because he sets you up perfectly with the framework of what we have to operate in. But yes. I think certainly for us at the moment, there's a need, coming out of the financial meltdown in 2007-8. The playing field shifted. I don't think before that time we had to demonstrate integrity or trust to customers. It was a given. It was part of the floor. And I think, we often look at ourselves and say, at the moment, we have to demonstrate two things. And this is to your point about what are consumers really asking us to do. And the first thing is that the company is the right size and the right fit for what the world is now. And the second thing is to demonstrate that we actually add to the social platform of the world rather than we are reductive to that. And so we spend a lot of time on that second one, trying to demonstrate that we talk about progress, but we talk about it on the terms of, well, how do we help individuals, communities, and companies progress? What is it that we do that is additive to the world?
Yeah, I just want to pick up on something. I know this is called Digital Place-Based Conference. I have a little bit of a hypothesis, and certainly I'd welcome my panelists or even anyone in the audience to kind of challenge me on this, but I do think there is somewhat of an emotional void in everything that digital represents. I know it's a big generalization, but brands today, it is interesting, brands that were built on performance are now looking for that emotional quota. They're actually realizing the kind of power of brand communication, and vice versa. The Unilevers of this world are now leaning more into, if you like, performance kind of digital metrics. But what is interesting is that if you accept that, A, marketing's complex, but B, we all need brand relevance. The topic of the book, Bobby, this notion of having a purpose, having a North Star that kind of transcends, and actually is good for your bottom line to have that as well. I think what you're saying is you can be good, you can be cool, and you can be profitable as well.
Absolutely.
So try and connect those dots, because obviously that does speak a bit more to the kind of emotional relevance that brands also need in a world of frictionless, and everything's more efficient, and everything's meant to be more automated, let's say. Talk a little bit about that connection of, let's say the profitability that might come from this, from this kind of work.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the data, we've tracked even companies in the S&P, they outperform those brands that have a social responsibility mission or connection to their business are outperforming those that don't. If you look at in terms of longevity, brands that have a real place in the world are better positioned for longevity in the space where businesses are disappearing much quicker than ever before. And if you look at in terms of what are the key drivers for brand strength, the number 2 driver right now is social activism. So if you look at, number 1 being leading edge, number 2 is social activism. And so when you look at these trackers, you're seeing consistently that the marketplace is saying that this is of real value, not just value, societally, but also value financially. And when you start to connect those dots to having a purpose and having a real place in this world, and the type of stories and the narratives that you can create and tell about why you exist, it just creates an entirely different and more powerful and compelling way to show up in people's lives. When you can say the reason why we exist is to add real value to this life, to your lives, to other people, and to the planet. And that just creates a whole other opportunity for emotional connection.
I couldn't agree more, but I think it's, especially someone, and we make a lot of money, banks make a lot of money, and it's not about demonstrating how you give it to charity or your CSR projects. It's what you really do as your core business.
Exactly,
and
yeah.
demonstrating, we've got a...
Or what the consumers can do.
Correct.
As a result of, let's say, in retail banking.
And even as a corporation, we, when you look at some of the advertising we're running at the moment, of where we talk about, how we helped the Detroit Lighting Authority put lights back in Detroit. We didn't just give them money. We raised money on the stock market when literally they were going bankrupt, and we put money on our own balance sheet. We'll make money, they'll make money, but society benefits, and I think that's the equation you have, because if it's about philanthropy and charity, the sustainability of those programs is limited.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting, at the central thesis, I think, of what we're saying, not just of the book, but I think in society today, is it shouldn't be that, the head of corporate responsibility that kind of sits in an annex. It really is, how you think about this as a core part of your employee base, as well as your consumer output, let's put it that way. And it doesn't have to be marketing, it can be your services, it can be obviously your kind of ethos. Now there's a connection point here I mentioned before, and it was a kind of blindingly, for me, why the hell didn't I think of that moment way back? And I remember being involved in a conference where at the end of the conference we got together and we voted on some initiatives that as a group of kind of business people and marketeers, we would get behind. And the initiative that we were championing, which predates what Mark and his organization did, was why the hell doesn't New York City have a kind of bike program? It was just illogical that there wasn't one, and there were some emerging in various other capital cities of the world. So I want to hand it over to Mark. It, to me, is one of these great examples. In fact, it's also, Bobby writes about it in the book. It's one of the great good case studies here. But it's, to me, a fantastic illustration of an ownership, a creation, almost like a co-creation ownership. And I'd love you to talk to that, Mark. But maybe you can talk to it both from, was it purpose-driven? Was it justified on the media? Was it a bit of both? What was a little bit of the nucleus behind it? And Bobby, please follow on, because I know you like the case as well.
Yeah. So obviously, before we get into that, we should probably take a moment of reflection of just what happened in New York yesterday. And obviously, we're very sad and a very heavy heart of just that act of terror in the bike lanes of New York, extremely sad.
Yep.
But looking at the program, it's exactly to that platform of where, I think there was an NPR commentator that said, well, did City do this because they wanted to demonstrate they wanted people to be healthy, or they wanted people, it was a sustainability program, or was it about, just feeling that there was a new, to your point, there weren't bikes in New York and there needed to be a program? Or was it because they just wanted to use it as a marketing mechanism? And at the end of the day, it's probably all of the above.
Yeah.
And it ticks the boxes on all of those. There's a program now, there's 130,000 members. We're up to actually millions and millions and millions of rides a year.
Yeah.
I think we exceeded last year's number of rides by the end of October of this year, so you can imagine it's growing by at least 2/12.
Yeah, and expanding
the
geographies as well.
And I think it was as much about this is a good marketing practice and a good thing to do, as well as then look at the benefit it gives society. It wasn't a program where we felt, look, we really want to put ourselves out there and talk about people's health and heart.
Yeah.
It was as much about how can we use this but there's a great benefit to it, and we've extended that program into Miami, and we're running a similar program in Poland now as well.
Wow.
Slightly less part of the year because winter sort of gets in the way in Poland.
Well, sometimes New York can be a problem as well, but no, I think it's a great illustration, and I'll definitely let Bobby. But my contribution to it is that it's kind of interesting. You kind of sometimes in sponsorships you feel like you're just the next renter of that real estate, so to speak. The real estate that sits on television, the real estate that kind of sits in, and the fact that you kind of created it somewhat together with obviously the city of New York, obviously. But the level of difficulty to get it off the ground was also, because you really were a strategic partner in the entire creation of it. So it goes beyond this notion of actually there's something we can rent, and excusing the pun of rent, but renting media. It feels to me as if it's authentic. It feels to me as if it is part of New York City. It feels as if it keeps giving every day in a very obvious and unobvious way. And I'm sure the metrics, when you look at the media buy, it's probably actually a pretty bloody good media buy as well. But it's interesting because if you can get that equilibrium right, then it's a win-win all the way around, isn't it?
No, you make a great point of where that was a program where, obviously at the time Bloomberg said, I don't want the people of New York to pay anything for this. So literally, it was the operator was looking for someone to pay for the program, and if you didn't find someone with the longevity of that program wouldn't have happened. So, he did set up. New York had been looking at an expansion of bike paths, and so it was a natural thing to happen. Mm-hmm. Anybody looking to start that program, you start with the bike paths and then have the bikes. You don't do it the other way around.
Yeah.
But no, and as an advertising medium, there's 630 docking stations around New York, which is its own out-of-home network, and it's now a digital network as well.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Interesting, Bobby. Tell us what when you wrote about it. Just give us any complimentary perspectives.
I think the things that really stood out, and Mark, I'm sure you can attest to this, was first of all, it was probably the most, if not the one of the most successful out-of-home media marketing campaigns ever. And it's I think the attribution to Citibank is 100%. I mean, at the time we were writing it, I mean, everyone knows the brand that's connected to it. It has actually solved problems in people's lives and in communities that are important. Being able to connect communities to each other, being able to connect people to other spaces and cultural hubs they may not have been able to have been exposed to, and even just navigating different neighborhoods they wouldn't have been able to. It's created a sense of connection and a sense of community across New York that I think has just been remarkable. And then the other thing was just the internal, I think, pride and excitement that happens within the company of people who were connected to this program, who got the chance to see it and to know that they were actually doing work that optimized people's lives, so that actually solved problems. And that in itself is invaluable. I mean, whatever your business is, when you're able to connect and do work that the people inside of the organizations are really proud of and excited to be evangelists of, that word of mouth connected with media, connected with internal pride and advocacy, I mean, that's the win-win-win that you always want. And, I think was able to do, Citibank was able to do that in a way that I think is very remarkable and rare. And I think that also, hopefully is inspiring brands and media partners to really think about ways of pushing the envelope and creating solutions to people that people can really get excited about.
Yeah, I hope this brief discussion has kind of inspired thinking, and I'm just going to let, before I hand it to Barry back again, I'm just going to ask each of the panel. I'll start, so I'll let them have a little, 30-second head start to think about. But no, I mean, it's like, what are the lessons? I mean, I think hopefully the last 15 minutes, you've got kind of a roadmap. Many of you are obviously in this association, some of you are brands as well, so obviously it's a slight nuanced difference. But I think what connects it is, do think about your business model, whether it's, if you're a brand, what's your business model in your brand? How can you make this a much more sort of central theme? How do you evaluate the kind of opportunities that, if you like, transcend some of those media values and they get into the relevance values? What is the relevance of this to society? What is the relevance of this to us solving a problem in one situation or providing that emotional connection? So those are things, and I do think that as an industry, as a marketing industry, as a media industry, and certainly as a DPAA, I think all of you should think about what is your purpose. Because I think, there's lots of videos that kind of talk about the metrics of success, and everyone's trying to lean into the analytics. I heard it said by one of the brand marketeers, if you come to me, please make it relevant to me. But I think one of the big secrets to success is not only making it relevant to the brand marketeer when you actually turn up and you want that meeting, but actually maybe even transcend it with thinking around this. I think if you have a brand purpose that transcends you trying to make money out of an opportunity in the media marketplace, then I think it will resonate even in a B2B market. Quick thoughts from Bobby that you would leave the audience, any lessons?
I would say that everybody here knows how competitive and tough the media business can be. We are in a marketplace where increasingly people are the new media. People, their advocacy, their point of view, their word of mouth is driving the way people find awareness and so forth. And so, I think within the media landscape and within the brand landscape, the responsibility that we have is to show up in people's lives in a way that makes them want to talk about who we are, what we do, and why they buy into that. And as Paul said, having a clear purpose, being able to articulate that, being able to tell those stories through media, being able to tell those stories through great product, and being able to connect with people where they are and give them a reason to be advocates and evangelists is, I think, the model that's going to continue to drive the way people generate not only awareness, but also sales and loyalty and all the other things that we all seek as marketers and business owners.
So Paul, picking up on something I think you said, I was in Cannes a couple of years ago, and there's two Cannes now. There's the Creator Awards and then the media show. And the disappointing thing was that two things weren't together. And I think what we've lost in this sort of dive into data is the creativity part of that. And we're I would beseech everybody to remember that creativity bit in the data, that yes, we're going to evaluate these things based on data, but we're going to evaluate them far more on the creativity of the idea. I mean, we operate in 165 markets, 102 in terms of offices, 17 in terms of retail bank. We have one bike program. We're open to many more ideas. And it's going to be creativity that we're looking for, not just data. I mean,
Yeah. You heard it here. Thank you, Bobby and Mark. Thank you for great thoughts.
Thanks, Paul.
And thank you, Barry.
Yeah. And by the way, Paul has always been cool. Thank you, Bobby. Mark, that's